Hey there, folks. Welcome to another edition of Stranger in a Southern Land. I, of course, am your host, Jake Manning. Today in the program, I speak with the enforcer, C.W. Anderson. CW and I have been friends for quite some time, I think since like 2005, 2006, and it's always a pleasure and an honor to be in his presence, but we never get to sit down and chat for long periods of time, mostly because he's a very focused individual. You know, he's very focused on his matches and he really wants to worry about that and focus on that. And so am I. I focus on my matches too, but also too have to worry about cameras and setting up a ring and merchandise table and putting out fires, so we don't get a lot of time to sit down and talk. So I'm very happy that he invited me into his home. We got to sit down and talk for quite some time. And of course, as the running theme of this podcast has become, is we talk about success and we talk about failures, you know, because CW has faced a lot of adversities. He's had to climb a lot of mountains and hasn't made it all the way up some mountains, but he's made it up others. So, you know, we talk about that. And that's why he's a true role model to me. You know, he still keeps going. And a lot of the adversity he's facing right now, he's getting banged up right now. I didn't realize some of the injuries and some of the difficulties he's going through physically. And the fact that he still wants to continue to wrestle after everything he's been through and some of the hardships physically he's gone through. I'm pretty amazed and I find that very inspirational. So I'm very happy to bring you this podcast, and I was very happy to sit down and talk with him because I felt like I got in there emotionally with him because, you know, he does a lot of podcasts, he does a lot of shoot interviews, but I got in there emotionally with him and talked with what drives that engine of being a professional wrestler. And anytime you can get in there and connect with somebody nicknamed the Enforcer on an emotional level, I think that's kind of a little tip of the cap for the interviewer, I must say. But anyways, folks, I want to give you some dates before we jump into this podcast because I will be wrestling again in the Charlotte area. It's been a while since I've been wrestling in the greater metro Charlotte area. It's been a while since PWX has been in the Charlotte area. So it's a long time coming because PWX will be returning to Charlotte and Escapade on January the 10th. That is a Sunday show. It is a matinee show, and it'd be on Independence Boulevard, like I said, at Escapade, which is just in the shadow of the old Charlotte Coliseum. So if you want more information about that show or buy the tickets, make sure you log on to pwxpro.com. Also, too, I'll be doing some stand-up comedy in South Carolina on January 16th, that is. I'm having a little trouble with these dates right now because they're kind of far out, but I want to give you more than enough time to get there. So if you want to see me do stand-up comedy, I'll be performing comedy Saturday, January 16th at Cozy's in Catawba, South Carolina. I'll be posting a poster for that show on social media. So if you want to know more about that show, make sure you follow me on social media, which is very easy to do, folks, let me tell you. So if you want to follow me on Twitter and know more about the shows upcoming, because I kind of sneak them in there. I had a last-minute show last week that came up before I cut the intro, and you would have missed out on an opportunity to see me perform. So I want to make sure that you have every ample opportunity to come out and see me wrestle, do improv, and do stand-up comedy. So, and the best way to do that is to follow me on social media. I am available on Twitter at ManScoutManning and on Instagram at ManScoutManning. I also have a YouTube page. You can just search ManScoutManning. Also, if you have a question about the podcast or if you want to become a sponsor of this podcast, make sure you email me at jake@sslshow.com. Or if you want to book me for an upcoming wrestling event, make sure you email me at manscoutmanning@yahoo.com. Also, don't forget to log on to Facebook and like the Stranger in a Southern Land Facebook page. If you just type in Stranger in a Southern Land, it'll come right up. So make sure you give me a like there. Also, too, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes. Please, that is very important in bumping me up the rankings. I would really appreciate that. And I can't thank you enough because we got a lot of great podcasts. And I want to make sure that it comes right to you on your phone or whatever device that you have, because I've got some amazing podcasts coming up. And I've got one coming up right now with the Enforcer, C.W. Anderson, here on Stranger in a Southern Land. Plus, if I don't see us in there, I get worried. Yeah. I don't know what it is. Even though this is an audio podcast, if I don't see ourselves in the viewfinder,
right. I just habit of what you've been doing.
Yeah, it's just, and that's the thing too. That's what's great about this is that, I've been doing shoot interviews, so I've been trying to, film interviews in ladies' restrooms like the last time, we sat down and talked.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the it was a lady at that PWF hall. Yep.
Yeah. So that's, it's
you can hear the echoes and stuff like that.
It wasn't too bad. I was able to, luckily there's some things I've learned how to do is like the defilter and the bouncing around and stuff like that. So that's just kind of all it is.
Right.
So. But no, so we're just having talking.
Okay.
I'll probably take it right from there, anyways, and get going.
Okay.
So, like I said, like you've done a lot of these wrestling podcasts, and I'm hoping this is going to be completely different than other ones because I really want to touch on wrestling, but not focus on it so much. That's
fine.
That's a curious way that I say it, because we've known each other for a while, and like I was saying before we hit record, was that a lot of times at wrestling shows, we see each other. We like seeing each other.
Yeah.
Like, hello, how are you? And then somebody grabs me and I have to run off somewhere.
Yeah, you got to do something else. Yeah, you get to say hello and talk for a few minutes, how you been, and then the rest of the night it's in passing.
It's always in passing.
Yeah.
Always in passing. And that's even funny, too, which brings me to the first time that I ever met you. And this is a story that I've always wanted to share with people.
Okay.
We finally have a platform to tell you. The first time I ever met you, and I think the first time I ever said hi to you was in the ring. It was some awful show, some guy that was trying to take over wrestling as always, and he was going to do it in South Carolina, because what better place to take over pro wrestling than in South Carolina?
Oh, yeah.
It was like Palmetto Championship Wrestling.
I remember Lodi helped out with that promotion.
Yes, it was Lodi. We were bringing the ring, and we got there super late because we didn't realize that driving a ring will add almost an hour onto a trip.
Right.
And then we got stuck in traffic, and so we had to hurry up and set up the ring. And we got there like an hour before doors opened, so like we were rushing to get the ring up and didn't know anybody, so we just had just enough time to put the ring up, go get changed, and me and Robert, one of our interns at High Spots, were having a match, and you were supposed to run in and like attack us, but we didn't know anything else because you were going over the match after, because you were going to do some match and then do with somebody else, so you wouldn't even have. They said CW is going to jump you. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll be in a stalling suplex. He's going to hit you. Okay, all right. Stalling suplex. We got to wrestle for like 8 minutes. I was a stalling suplex, and I remember you sliding in the ring, and you're like, great match, and then you punched me in the face. Which, now that I know you and know your reputation, what better story to like explain to people? That was the first time I ever met CW Anderson. Was him saying great match and then punching me in the face.
Take this out there to compliment you.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I like about you. You've always had a good reputation, and people know you, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here and talk. Because I
appreciate that.
We don't like sit down and actually say, hey, I'm gonna have a conversation with you.
Right. Go over past and talk about what's been going on and things like that. Yeah, I hardly get to do that with anybody because, like you said, when you get to the show, most of the time you say hello, you find out what's going on, and then the rest of the time your mind is so preoccupied with your match that night, and then by the time it's over with, it's time to get changed and then get back to the house. Because the way I've always done it is, once my match is over, and I'm, most of the time I have a long ways, like, because I work in Virginia a lot. So when my match is over, as much as I love seeing everybody, I'm ready to get home. I'm ready to be, in my bed, because Sunday is my last day before I go back to work, and I kind of want to just decompress. The Omega shows that we do, they're such on a grand scale that when you get done with your match, you're out there either watching the other matches or you're watching the crowd, and then it's like when it's over with, it's like when you turn the lights on and roaches scatter, everybody's gone. So you never really get to sit down with the guys unless you go out to dinner with them and talk afterwards. And it's rarely where you're sitting down talking with people that's 90% of your conversation is wrestling and stories and things like that, because you really know most personal things. Because there's a lot of people, before Facebook and it became so socially media didn't know my real name. And you never get to see the other side of the person. You always get to see the CW Anderson that people talk about. That he hurts people in the ring, he's stiff in the ring, he's an asshole, because I guess the way I carry myself sometimes. But you never get to see the other side of me, the way I look at it.
No, it's exactly, because I carry myself very similar to you, and you're definitely one of those guys that I look to. Like, I would like to be seen as somebody, like, because you have a tremendous amount of respect. But I think you and I also have the same problem in that we are so dedicated and care about what we put in the ring that the whole time before our match is us worrying about the actual match itself.
Yeah, I've always been, since day one, I want to be the guy that could. That's why Bobby Eaton was one of my idols, and my huge idol was I wanted to be him to the extent of I could go out there and work a broomstick, or I could go out there and work Hogan and have a 5-star match with him. I want to be able that guy that I could put me in the ring with anybody out there, and I could have a great match with him. So when I find out, like weeks before, if I'm working a certain guy, I'm thinking of stuff all week. When I get to the show, I'm thinking of stuff. I get ideas from them because I want to go out there and give the fans their money's worth, the promoter that the confidence of them booking me, and also I don't want to disappoint myself because if I have bad matches, I am the worst person on myself. Still to today, 23 years I've been doing this, I still want to give them a great match, and if I don't go out there and have that 5-star match or close to it, I get disappointed with myself because you know as well as I do, you get in the ring with some guys, and their skill level is just not there.
Oh yeah, you're definitely one of those guys that like has to work around people's flaws in a sense would probably be the best way to put it, or their holes in some of their work and stuff like that. And you're one of those guys that are freaking. And when you become one of those guys, you sit around and you're thinking like, okay, if he's not here for this, I have to be prepared for this. And then it's almost like you're remembering like 3 other different matches in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, you're planning for A, B, and C because most of the time, unless you get in there with the guys that's been at that level, A is always going to work.
Yeah, and you can call it in 5 minutes. Or otherwise, like, I don't know if he's... Or you'll see him suggest something, and you have to politically say, I don't know if this will quite work.
What do you think about let's doing it this way and making it work a little bit better? And like you said, you have to work around their flaws, and a lot of times you have to do that whole KISS method and to keep it simple because if you can't get too technical because they're just not going to be there for it, and it's just totally going to ruin what you set out to do. Yeah. So you have to give just a basic style match instead of go out there and being able to, tear the house down, so to speak. You just got to go and basically get through it. And that kind of disappoints me sometimes because guys, I won't say they don't get properly trained, but they don't try to advance in their skill set because they get stuck in one promotion where they're the big fish in a little pond. And then they come to these other shows and they're stepping in the ring with guys that's been doing it years and can, go with anybody, and they're just not prepared for it.
Yeah, well, you can get whatever training you want, but you'll see what you said, the advancement. But like, here's the thing: the difference between you and probably them is the fact that you're like, Bobby Eaton's my favorite wrestler. I want to wrestle so good that if Bobby Eaton ever saw me wrestle, he would be proud. Right. And that's something that George South always used to say is like, if you have a favorite wrestler, don't you want him to think that you're a good wrestler? Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people think that way, and I don't know why you wouldn't.
Yeah, I gotta Bobby give me a compliment when I did get to work with him and did get to know him that way, and I always told him that you were the one I always looked up to, and one of the best stories I always tell is the first time that I got to meet him and be in the ring with him was at the ECW arena when Paul was going to do an angle with us, and he was such an influence, and I looked up to him so much that when I was walking through the back. And there was 2 curtains I had to walk through. And when I came through the first curtain and saw him sitting in the little hallway with Paul talking, I was like a little girl meeting Justin Bieber for the first time. I had to go in another room and collect myself and calm myself down before I went out there and met him because that's the kind of influence he had on me. And, I never got properly trained when I come through, but I made the advancements to go to the power plant and to get the proper training to take my skills to that other level. And I just wish a lot of guys would take every opportunity they could, because on shows I try to give everybody their this could do better, this can do better, because I always tell them at training seminars, your trainer's not 100% correct. I'm not 100% correct. Your job is to take what you learn there, go to another guy, learn from you, learn from me, and fine tune it and put it in your own style to what works. And that's what I did.
Yeah, it's all different voices and stuff like that. Because like you got to look at if this guy tells you to do a hammer lock, this way, but the guy's like, oh, it looks more like a shoot like this. But then one guy's like, if you get an old timer, he thinks you're trying to shoot on him, don't do it like this. Then you got to be adaptive. You got to know different things in different ways.
You got to work different because you work Ricky Morton one way, and then you work, the Hardys and Hurricane Helms another way. It's totally different. And then you work some of the younger guys. You have to totally work different ways around them.
Yeah, and you got to be able to interchangeable like that. And it's funny that you talk about Bobby Eaton and how much you love him. I, much like yourself, am absolutely blown away by him. And I always find it funny with me is because I didn't grow up in this area. I didn't grow up with the wrestling that was going on in this area. That much like you saw Bobby Eaton, Midnight Express. First time I ever saw Bobby Eaton he was a blue blood,
right,
with William Regal, and I loved him. And that's why I always say that true talent always rings true, no matter what circumstance you put him in. If somebody's that good, they'll shine through, and Bobby always shined through for me. It's like, I love that guy. So him, Brad Armstrong, and Arn Anderson were like my three on WCW Saturday night. Like, gosh, those would be wrestlers I would love to be like.
Brad I never got to work with him, but I was always like that with Brad. I always thought he was an amazing wrestler, amazing talent that really never got, the push that he deserved. And I was at the power plant one time, and he saw me wrestle in a tryout match that they were doing with the power plant students, and he come up and give me one, another great compliment. Me and the guy I was wrestling with, Toad, that we were doing ECW style stuff when we were at the power plant training. He's like, man, you guys are awesome. You should be pushing to do more. And just hearing him talk and give you that confidence, man, it's knowing for somebody I respected. Because, again, he's like Bobby to me. He could go out there and work with anybody. He had a great look, great attitude. He just never got what should have been coming to him, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Is it almost like the compliments are kind of like what you seek out? Like, like obviously everybody wants to make money and do things and get more over. But, like, are the compliments the things that you hang your hat on at night?
A lot. Because it's, I've never made a lot of money in this business because I never got to that level. When my time was coming at ECW, right when I was supposed to grab that golden ring, it was taken away. ECW was defunct. And I went over in Japan. I'm going to make good money over there. But, hearing stuff like, several of the compliments still ring true to me. Shinya Hashimoto used to send the Japanese and the American wrestlers over there to Steve Corino and myself to get trained, to learn Japanese wrestling in American style. And he'd always say, CW and Steve are your two best American wrestlers to learn from. Chris Benoit gave me a compliment one time after I worked Chris Masters right before he got, and Shane Helms was standing right there when he was giving it to me.
And that's what he gets to get the witness of the compliment.
Yeah.
So then, because sometimes those compliments are so good, you're like, nobody's ever going to believe that they ever said this. So you're like, oh, thank God there's a witness for this.
Shane was right there when Chris was giving me the compliment of, man, you were awesome in the ring. You got it. You got that. You got the look, not the look, but he said you got the style. He said everything you do is perfect in the ring. And Shane was right there. He's like, man, he's got that Joey Matthews disease. Got all the talent in the world, but just can't catch that break. And then Mick Foley one night when we did TNA Hardcore Justice, after I worked Scorpio, I come in the back and all the boys are sitting there watching it, and Mick grabs me. And he said, great stuff, CW. I said, thanks, Mick. I appreciate that. He said, no, look, he said, I've heard your name thrown across everywhere. I knew your name from ECW, but I never got to watch you. He said, it's nice the first night I got to see you. He said, I heard all this hype about you. He said, and the hype's true. He said, you're phenomenal in the ring. He said, I love what you're doing. And again, it's that compliment stuff that means a lot to me, because it's, I don't know what it was about the compliments that I have seeked out all these years. Maybe because my dad was never around to give me that, that advice or the compliments I was needing. Maybe I was seeking that. I mean, I don't know. It's things like that, because when I was wrestling, my family didn't want me to do it. Mm-hmm. They just kept saying, won't you stop this stupid stuff? Why don't you, get back to your real job? Just stop doing it. And it wasn't until I made the name for myself that then they were on my side. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why I've always liked and seek the compliments, because it's never been about an ego for me. It's just been what I've been doing is paying off.
Yeah, it's the validation.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the respect from your peers.
Yes.
Because it's entertainment. You know that you may never get to the top of the heap.
Yeah.
You never, and in money, sometimes you may never get to the point that you make all the money in the world. But it's those compliments that if you just work hard,
Yeah.
that seem like they're almost more obtainable if you're doing it the right way.
That's stuff that never can be taken away from you.
Exactly.
And the one, Shane Helms always said that I was at the time the most underrated wrestler out there because of, he says, I worked with the best in the ring, and he says, you're right there with it. Now, granted, I've known Shane since we were very, very little because he grew up right down the road from me and was really good friends with my brother. But still, Shane had great success in WWE, and he's been in the ring with a lot of great talent. And still hearing that from him, he's like, Shane, he don't pull any punches. He's a straight shooter. Hearing that has been is one of the other things you can hang your hat on, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we know like quite a few guys that have that same type of well respected and stuff like that. But sometimes that never translate into, I guess, the big success. And there's so many guys that when you're good, it's almost like you're pushed aside. I mean, why do you think that is?
I don't know. I don't know if it's a political thing. I don't who.
But there's so many guys we hear about, like, this guy's good, this guy should be
Yeah.
doing up, and then we see guys on the top of the heat, and like, what are they doing?
Oh,
What
I
are
know.
they seeing him?
You see, there's so many guys, even during my reign or the little time I was there, and even before that, you sit there and watch him, and you're like, why is this guy getting his break? He sucks. He is horrible. And there's so many talented guys that just can't catch that break. I get, there's only so many spots, and it's that right place, that right time, and what whoever's up there sees in you at that moment. I have never been able to figure that out, because I wish I would, because I've been able to slide in there myself.
Yeah.
Arn told somebody one day that if one of the refs or one of the Armstrongs that was a ref, I think it's Scott, when I was there at the WWE, he said if Vince would find something to do with WWE, he'd be one of the most over people in the company, because slow, methodical, doesn't hurt people. It makes him being a heel. It makes sense for him being a heel, because he does it so well. And again, that's another great compliment coming from Arn Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that never panned out as well. So like my career has been right there, but just can't get past that point. Something a lot of times it's been frustrating, but maybe it just wasn't meant for me to be like that.
Yeah, because it almost comes down to luck, because you're putting on a consistent performance, but maybe that one night where they needed something like that, or were looking for something like that.
The night I got my job at ECW, it was the right place, right time. Wasn't even supposed to go. I didn't want to go. My friend drugged me down there, and he was having a tryout, and his didn't go so well, and Nova threw me in the ring, and Paul and the Dudleys happened to be sitting there watching me. And Paul liked what he saw, came in the back, talked to me, and a little bit later put me on the show that night. And that's kind of how I got my start. Again, it's right place, right time.
Absolutely. But backing up, you mentioned Arn, and I've always been kind of curious about this, because obviously you just said Anderson isn't your real last name.
Mm-hmm.
But, you use that as your name in the ring. And Anderson obviously is very famous in the world of wrestling.
Right.
Did you ever get any flack from any of, like an Ole or an Arn or anybody else? Ole?
Mm-hmm. It was never my intention to be an Anderson when I first started. It was given to me by a guy that was running the Anderson gimmick, who got permission from Gene, because anybody knows Gene is legitimately the only real Anderson there was. Arn got it, Ole got it, the same way I got it. It was given to him. The guy, Gene, give this guy Pat and the guy he was tagging with, Rocky, permission to use the Anderson name. Rocky was going to retire. Pat was looking for somebody else to tag with, and they needed somebody else. And his words to me were, Gene, give it to us, and we could use it as any way as we saw fit and pass it on to somebody they deemed, that they saw. And I happened to fit that at the show. Again, I was at the show. Pat was at the show. He saw me wrestle. I had only been wrestling not long at all. But obviously he saw something in me and sat down, had to talk about using the Anderson name. And at the time, I didn't know the impact it would have on me. But I was like, yeah, sure, it'd be fun. Because I didn't know what I was going to do. Didn't know what kind of gimmick I was going to use. And I only had a goatee. He said, well, you got to grow your beard out. And we need to try to come up with a 3-letter name, because you had Ole, Arn, his name was Pat. I tried for so long to come up with something, and I couldn't never come up with a 3-letter name.
What were some duds that you get? Were you Sid Anderson?
No, Ike, and Cal, C-A-L. They were the only.
Cal?
Yeah, C-A-L. That was the only two I could come up with.
So, Cal. I thought you said cow. I'm like, Cow Anderson?
Yeah, even somebody else said that too. They say it's like the cow, C-O-W. I'm like, no, C-A-L.
Oh, okay.
So one night I'm doing a little local TV show, and a longtime friend of mine that used to be my baseball coach turned into an independent manager, wrestling manager. I'm sitting there talking to him, and his name was Randy Driver. And I said, Mr. Randy, I can't come up with anything, talking about the Anderson thing. He said, just use your initials and call you CW. And I said, never even thought about using that, and it stuck. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's been since then.
Stuck with it.
Yeah, it's way better than Cal.
Yeah, but you said Ole gave you some flack.
Yes.
How'd that interaction go?
For High Spots, I came in to do a show in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. I had just gotten back from Japan. I got hurt. You know, I had my hand split open working Masato Tanaka's. So I was hurting. I came in to do the show, and it was a whole thing for Ole to give me permission. I'd already talked with Arn when I was down at the little stuff I did with WWE. I got to talk with him. And once I had come through ECW, Paul had talked to him about giving me the Enforcer moniker, and he was good with it. Had no heat with Arn.
So he was cool. Like he told you to your face, like do it.
His exact words were, "I hope you have more success with it than I did."
Which
that would have been amazing because he had great success with that name. So I came
he's downplaying his career greatly. Is what
exactly.
he's doing.
So I came in to work Chris Hamrick that night, and Ole was supposed to get in the ring. We were supposed to go back and forth, talk about being an Anderson, and he was going to finally give me the handshake and the permission. As soon as I get to the show, I go up and introduce myself, and he's sitting there peddling his book, and he goes, "Well, so you're the other Anderson?" "Yes, sir, I am." And talked to him he wasn't even talking. He was just talking to whoever he was with, and he would come back and speak to me, and my girlfriend was with me at the time. And she introduced himself, and he's like, "I don't really give a shit. Just buy my book." That was his exact words. I'm like, God knows, I'd heard about how bitter he is. Somebody came up to me, I don't remember who it was, and they give him, you give him a quick handshake and a hug, and he goes, "Oh my God, 30 years in this business, now everybody's turned to vags." I said, okay. He wouldn't get in the ring after the match to do the thing with me, so I had to go over to him. And I still remember it on video when I said, "Ole, I've traveled a long ways to see you." In his exact words, under his breath, and you can still hear it, is, "I don't give a shit." So then, instead of going back and forth, I said, "I'm done." I forget what I said, but I do know that I said something to the, "You can be a man and stand up and give me your permission, shake my hand, or you can just sit there," something along those lines. And I said, "I'm going to take the name you could only bring to this level, and I'm going to take it to here." And I think Michael got me in the back to do a shoot to add to it about how disrespectful he was, because even Michael was pissed off about it, about how he was with the thing with Ole. So my first and only meeting with Ole was a complete disaster.
Well, I think most people have that story.
Yeah.
Mine's very similar.
Yeah. He would do interviews later, and people were talking about, "Ole just trashed you on the radio." I'm like, I really don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it had been Arn, that's a different story. Somebody I respect, but him, no respect whatsoever.
He hates everything. So
Yeah.
I'm in the long list.
I mean, I understand being an Anderson is what made you in this business. How can you be so just bitter about wrestling, right? And just hate everything. I don't watch a lot of wrestling, but I'm not bitter towards it and talk shit about the guys that have made it and great success. I don't talk crap about them. Why are you even like this? I guess it's just how he is.
No. You brought up a point about like you're not bitter about, because you've gone through a few ice cream seasons at this moment in time. You've been doing it for quite some time, but you've continued to do it. And it seems like your passion for it still exists, and, and you care about your work. Why is that?
Sometimes I explain it as a drug, because I don't drink alcohol a lot. I mean, a beer here and there. I'm more of a wine person. I don't smoke. I've never been into any kind of, being a wrestler, people look at you as a drug addict anyway because of all the stories you hear. I've never done anything like that, but I guess this is my drug. I get such a high off of being in the ring and seeing, and now it's to the point where I just like going to the shows and seeing everybody and love performing. Used to, it was just being recognized and things like that. But now I love still performing. I love going to the shows and seeing everybody because I've known people for so long. It's what I know. There was a few years, 4 or 5 years ago, that I had lost my love for it. I went through a real bad marriage and had a really bad time. So my attention was diverted, put on a lot of weight, and I was kind of done with it, even to the point where my ex-wife at the time made me retire. If you want to be with me, you have to retire. And I did, but that didn't last long. Yeah. So it's been 23 years I've been doing this. I can't say if there's one thing, but there's just small combinations. I love going to shows, seeing everybody, getting in the ring, performing. And at 44 years old, in better shape now than I was when I was in college. I've lost, right at 50 pounds, and somebody was saying how that I still move like I'm 25 years old. So I guess if I ever get to that point that I feel like I'm hurting the business, I'll walk away. But for right now, I'm still able to perform at a level that I was 20 years ago, the way I feel in the ring. And that's one of the reasons I still keep doing it. I mean, I love the show. I love giving people their money's worth.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all kinds of little things that I love about doing the business. Because you hear so many negative things about it, and with the pay, and because we never get paid that great anyway. It's not about the money, because if it was, all of us would not do it. Everybody can't do what we can do.
Mm-hmm.
I've always explained us as the greatest actors, the greatest magicians, and the greatest storytellers, and the greatest stuntmen all combined into one. You can't get somebody from baseball or football or basketball to step in the ring and do what we do, because it looks like crap, or an actor. But we can go and do things they do. We're a special breed, and I like being a part of that special breed. Is the way I look at it. So for now, as long as I'm able to still do it, I still like going and meeting people, and still like the traveling. It's kind of worn off on me. When I was 10, 15 years ago, I liked going to Japan. I like being over there. Now I just like being at home and doing the shows on the weekends and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned a couple of things in that very, very fantastic answer that kind of ring through to me real quickly. You talk about giving people their money's worth. You've said it a couple of times already in this interview, and also too, you've said, you stand out in a sense. And I'm wondering, is that like probably from your rural upbringing, because we're on a farm kind of in the middle of nowhere, and you said you grew up just down the road and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that those things are basically from kind of your background? Because I'm from a very similar background and have the same type of ideals. As I've always wanted to stand out, because in a rural area everybody's kind of the same, everybody does their business, and you just do your work and keep your head down. And then also too, it's that idea of understanding the value of a dollar.
Oh yeah. My whole life, my family was never rich. I won't even call us blue collar. Mom, I'm pretty much raised us by ourselves. My dad was always traveling, working out of town. He's a bridge builder. So in this area, because I grew up 10 minutes from here, it was a crossroads. We lived on a dirt road. We were the only white family. So everybody on the road, was black people. My best friend right now is a black guy. Around here, Steve Carino has always been my best friend, wrestling wise and around the world. But my longtime childhood friend is this black guy that I hang out with till today. Did not have a lot growing up. So anytime we didn't even have cable, which was a satellite dish, till I was 25 years old. Never really got to go anywhere and do anything, travel. I didn't even go to Virginia till I was almost 20 years old, and that's an hour away, because I just couldn't afford it. Very, not dirt poor, but not far from it. Barn tobacco when I was growing up, had odd jobs here and there. My mom had different jobs. So anytime I got to go see NWA at Dorton Arena, it was a treat for me to be able to afford to go do something like that. I didn't go watch basketball games, football games. We didn't have pro teams around here for the longest time. And again, I didn't travel because I couldn't afford it. Know what it's like to have the lights cut off all the time, not even to have heat for the winter, actually heating part of the house with the stove. It's that kind of thing is how I grew up. So again, like you said, the value of the dollar meant a lot to me. So I knew when we go to these shows, some of these people run through these same situations, and how hard it is to make that dollar during the week, and the money they spend to come and watch us, to be able to, buy a picture from us. That's why I don't charge an outrageous amount for pictures. Giving away free autographs sometimes for people just because I see they can't afford to do it. And the joy they get to live for a couple hours by seeing people they've watched on TV. And I get so frustrated, almost to the point of being pissed off, when these veterans come into shows, demand a crazy amount of dollar. The promoter pays them, and they come in and they lollipop their way through a match. One, they're getting paid way more than I do, and they don't even, that whole giving back and going there and busting your ass to be able to give back to the fans. If you can't do it, then don't do it. That's why I go out there and still work at 110%, because like you said, I know what it's like for them people to make that money to come and spend to watch us entertain them. That's what we're there for. I don't like being called an entertainer, and to some extent that's what we are. And there's, a couple people that I still talk to at shows and, friends with them on Facebook, and see the hard lifestyles they're living, the struggles they're living. And, I was right there with them. I'm not a millionaire. I don't have a lot of money now because I lost a lot when I went through liver failure. So I still put myself in their shoes, and I want them to walk away as like, man, C.W. Anderson, give me my money's worth that night. Because like I said, I know how hard it is to make that dollar during the week, how hard you have to work for you, to come and see us do what we do. And I'm appreciative that they're there, because without them, there is no us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I don't think a lot of even, especially younger guys, see it that way. And I wish more, guys when they break in and not only just help with the ring, but at least work the door once and handle the money. And when somebody buys a ticket, look in their eye and say, thank you. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes you can see what they kind of went through just to get to that point, to have the money in their hand.
Just by what they wear.
Yeah.
When they walk in the door. The guys that break into this business, you're exactly right. They need to help set up the ring and take down the ring. They need to help out around the show to see what it's like, because I had to do it. Even after my ECW run, when I went to Japan, I had to do it in Japan. Steve and I had to do it. And then, my mindset, I said, dude, do they know we're part of the stars here? And Steve's like, it ain't like that over here. He said, you basically have to pay your dues all over again. Then it got to a point where I didn't have to do it. But it still makes you respect what we're doing more. The guys in Japan, the first year they learn to train, they're not even allowed in the locker room at all. Mm-hmm. They're little black boots, no knee pads, black trunks. That's what they train with. So when they get their kick pads and their gear for their gimmick, it's a ceremony. It's a special thing. Over here, guys, all they got to do is call up a company and they're able to get it. And then, everybody wants to wear kick pads and stuff like that, but they don't value, some don't, what it's like, the struggles to get through it, to make it. They think as soon as they get into business, they should be on TV. Mm-hmm. And it's a long way.
Well, and that's the thing. So you got to have that base and understand, I have to do this for these fans, these people that pay the money. And if you always have that base and you advance, it seems like you don't have the big fallout. Like, you'll get the guys that'll explode right away and they'll get to the top and they get the big ego. And they usually have a pretty strong fall on the way down, because they don't realize what it took to get there and how to stay and maintain and know each level. You know what I'm saying?
That's why you see a lot of the wrestlers that kill themselves, because they don't know how to deal with being a normal person. They don't know what it's like to go to Walmart or go to Cracker Barrel, wherever it is, and walk in and nobody have a clue who they are or not say anything to them. They don't know how to deal with that. There's people now that have issues, and they want the people to recognize them when they go somewhere, and I don't. If you recognize me, and I've gone to several places around here that, they'll recognize me and they'll say hello, how have you been? But for the most part, if you don't recognize, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. That's why I think I've adapted well to being normal, because I've always remembered that little dirt road I came from. And I've said that in all my interviews, and since the beginning, I never wanted to get that ego to where I forgot where I came from. Because you said, man, it's a hard fall when you come down off top, because when you're on top, you have nowhere to go but down. And some guys can't deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But I want to go back to something that you kind of briefly talked about. You were talking about you went through a rough relationship, but now you're happy. You've got a wonderful relationship, your best shape of your life. I much know what that struggle's like. I went through a similar situation where I was in a bad relationship. It was, not very conducive. Wrestling was always a conflict. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people really realize when, we're out there traveling, putting our bodies on the line, and knowing that we just have to fight to get out the door sometimes, because of the person we're living with or in love with, quote unquote. You have to make compromises just to get out the door, and how much of a strain. And sometimes that affects, everything that's going on in career and friendships and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I don't think people realize the difficulty of that.
They always see, it's just that they always see the people see the glitz and glamour because that's all they're shown. They don't see the behind the door, behind the scenes of our travel, our daily lives, of what we're going through. And briefly, my last marriage, the woman I was married to caught her having an affair with somebody from our church. With the church we went to, she was having an affair with a Boy Scout leader from my church, and it sent me into a downward spiral to where I lost all this weight. And technically was the best thing that's ever happened to me. But where I would go to shows, I would ask to be put on early, just so I could get back home, because I didn't.
You didn't want to hear the grief. You didn't want to hear it from
and then
her.
Plus I didn't. Yeah, she didn't want me to go be there, and then I couldn't trust her because I didn't know what she was going to be doing while I was gone.
Probably at the same time she's accusing you of messing
Doing
around
stuff.
the whole time.
Oh, exactly. And her parents were accusing me of doing things because they never believed that their daughter would do something like that. But I was like, I physically caught her. So it put such a strain on my wrestling and my mental capacity, because I was consumed, obsessed with that part of it, that my wrestling suffered, to where I didn't want to go to shows. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be around because people were going to ask me. I was going to think about it. And then when I was in my matches, I remember being in several matches, including my War Games match with Hermie Sadler's promotion, being in War Games, and that's all I'm thinking about. I didn't want to be there because I want to be home, because I knew what was going on. And, right before it all fell apart, that was the best thing that's ever happened, because it got me away from it. I was able to start concentrating on wrestling, ran back into the girl that was my very first girlfriend ever, the first girl I ever give my heart to, so to speak. Ran back into her. We started dating, less than a year later, we're married, have been married, this coming up January, been married 1 year, and it's been amazing. And she pushed me to start selling t-shirts, to start getting out there, to go back to school. She is literally got her foot in my back, pushing me to be better. The last one didn't do that. And it's amazing when you get a very good woman in your life that makes you love and loves what you're doing, because her and my stepdaughter, they love going to shows. They love seeing everybody. And my stepdaughter thinks it's cool as, all get out, that who I am and getting to meet all these people. And that drives me, and I love that part of it. That's why I still love going to these shows now, because she is enjoying it. And it's made me fall back in love with wrestling again, because in the last relationship, I didn't want to be around it. And it's such a different, my life is so different now. And it's just kept that drive in me to stay in shape, to keep going. And that's the part that people don't see. And they got to, we're human too. And when you get a good woman in your life, it's an amazing, and a bad one will drag you down. And I see so many people in our business that run through it, guys sleeping with other guys' wives and doing things like that, it's really, it takes a toll on you.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a weight. It's like an anvil around your neck all the time. And then you're in the car having text arguments and stuff like that. But when you have a good woman that just like lets you be yourself. And I think that's really what, like, any good woman, especially any woman that you and I could ever date, is somebody that understands that we are our own entities.
Yes.
And we have to be our own person. She understands that you're going to wrestle. It's going to be your career. It's going to be your thing. Go do it. I know when you come back, I will be here, and we'll have that time.
She goes with me. Shelly goes with me anytime she can. She, when we got back together, the first dinner we had, and we were sitting there talking, and I'm explaining to her, and she's like, well, I heard you were a professional wrestler. And I'm like, yeah. So I'm telling her certain things. And again, she's known me, since we were 13 years old. We didn't speak for 30 years before we ran back into each other. And after that dinner we had, she calls me the next day, and she goes, oh my God. I'm like, what's wrong? She said, I just Googled C.W. Anderson. She said, I had no idea that you've been there, done that, and all these accomplishments and what you've done in this career. I said, well, yes, I've done.
I'm kind of a big deal.
I said, yeah. I said, I've done a lot, and I've been blessed. She's like, she said, I just can't see. She said, I know Chris Wright, but I don't know C.W. Anderson. And I'm like, well, that's good, because I want you to fall in love with Chris Wright. I don't want you to know C.W. Anderson like that, because that's two different people. And that was the good part, that she didn't know that side of the wrestling part of me. which is even better. And like you said, she lets me go if she can't make it because of work. I go, she just wants to know I'm okay, and then come back. And I ain't got to rush. I ain't got to be in a hurry to get back. I ain't got to think about what she's doing when I'm gone. I can commit, 100% focus on what's going on in wrestling and in my matches, which you know as well as I do. You don't thinking about the wrong thing. You can hurt somebody or get hurt. So
absolutely. Yeah, and it's for me. I always say it's like, if I don't have a woman, it's like, oh, I need to be with somebody. I need that emotional thing. And then when you have, especially a good woman, it's like, okay, check. I'll take care. That part of my life is taken care of. I don't have to worry about it. And I can just worry about the wrestling. And it almost makes you more productive.
Oh, exactly.
And you're not like spending 24 hours a day with them, and I find it interesting, especially like a good woman, they'll push you to go do your own thing as opposed to, and then you still want to go do like wrestling. It's not like I met this good woman, I'll just focus completely on you.
Yeah, she knew I was a wrestler before we met. She knows I'm still a wrestler, and she has not one qualm with me still being a wrestler. She loves going to the shows. Cooper, my stepdaughter, she loves going to the shows with me. They get excited to go to these shows because Cooper's just a huge fan. They never knew anything about wrestling, but she likes being backstage and seeing everybody because they all adore Cooper. And Zane and Dawson has taken a huge liking to her, and they're like best friends. So she loves going to shows and seeing Zane and hanging out with him, which to me does my heart good, knowing that the boys have accepted her and Shelly, back there, because it makes it difficult when they don't like, because they couldn't stand the last one, so they didn't want to see her around. But this one, that's why when I get there, I got to worry about it. She'll get to the show, and she's like, "Where's Zane?" And off she goes. And they're really protective over her too. So to me that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's always good when you check that thing off your list. Okay, personal life taken care of.
Yeah, personal life taken on. Now I can just concentrate on wrestling and doing a little bit more.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you've always been like the guy when they ever want to do like ECW reunions or anything. Like, you're the guy like, okay, some of these guys can't go the way they used to, but we need to get in contact with CW Anderson to make sure that that we at least have one match that's passable, that looks like a wrestling match.
Yeah, they do.
How do you feel about being pegged as that guy? Like, okay, this is the guy we have to book.
I like it, knowing that I'm still able to go. It's the last one we did, the Hardcore Justice. It was me and Scorpio, and Scorpio can still go, and I can still go, and we put on a great match. And like you said, you see some of them that have. The years have not been kind to them, and they can't go, but I like still being that guy that I can go out there. They can, if anything, CW is going to give the ECW faithful a really good match. He's not just going to go out there and do gimmicks and stuff like that, and that be it. He's actually going to go out there and still able to wrestle. So yeah, I still like being able. At one time they were doing too many of them. It was like almost every few months somebody's doing an ECW reunion show. I'm like, enough's enough. Yeah. And everybody's trying to some people are trying to recreate it, and they asked me about what do you think if they recreate it? You can't recreate ECW. No. But yeah,
can't use all that copyrighted music anymore.
No, not one.
That was a big part. The big part of the success you can't use legally.
No, you can't do that. So having Sandman to come out with something different wouldn't even be right.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do that anymore. Forget the guys. You just can't use the copyright music.
I like being able that they can, if they're going to do that style, do an ECW unit, we'll call CW, and he's going to give us that good match. That makes me feel good that they still can depend on me to do that.
Yeah. And usually the guy you get paired with is Too Cold. And recently you just had a match with him that I saw the video clip, but the video clip probably doesn't do justice to what actually happened to you. Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I've worked Scorpio 5 or 6 times, and the first time I worked him was for ECW, for Francine Fournier. She did a benefit show, and again, a compliment that he gave me afterwards. He said, I've only had chemistry like this with 2 people in the ring, and he said, that's Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, and that's saying a lot, that because he's been there, done that as well. So it was my ideas. When the WrestleCade shows and all these shows, they were asking for somebody that I could wrestle, and I'm like, Too Cold Scorpio, because I know we're going to give them good matches. So we're doing a show in Kinston, North Carolina, And right before we go out, Shane Douglas and the boys come back and they're like, CW, y'all be careful, man. That ring is bad. You know, the padding's scattered everywhere, and the ropes are loose. Y'all just be careful. Well, the finish we had talked about, not the finish, but I was supposed to go over to, since he beat me at Hardcore Justice, I was going to beat him here, and it was going to be a 2 out of 3. The finale was going to be at WrestleCade. So he was going to do his finish, drop the bomb, which is, for people that's listening don't know, it's a moonsault into a leg drop. He told me before we go out there, he said, if the ring's that bad, he said, I'll just do a sky high, which is a leg drop off the top rope, and be fine. So he's doing a couple moves. He did a small moonsault, and he did a front leg drop, and we're sitting there figuring out the whole time we're talking about in the ring, the pad and being bad, and it can't bump here. And I remember specifically looking at him and said, Scorpio, don't do that, drop the bomb. I said, just do the leg drop. And I say that to him a couple times. So he does one move, and I set up for him to pick me up and reset me. And he's climbing to the top. So I lay back down, and where I'm laying at, my shoulders have padding, but my head is laying on the wood. The last thing I remember is him jumping, and from the video, his ass directly lands on my face. I don't remember anything. The next thing I remember, I vaguely remember sitting up, and I said, what happened? And Carino says, you got knocked out. And the first full thing I remember is I'm sitting in the chair in the back, and my wife, she had thrown up from, because the quick video you see of it is her diving in the ring, and then you hear Carino say, cut the camera off, and he dives in. Ooh. The whole time I'm knocked out, she's screaming at him to do something. They said I was out for between 5 and 10 minutes, more closer to 5. My lips had started turning purple. Scorpio slapping me, trying to wake me up, and I'm not coming to. Irvin Peacock, who's a ring announcer, Irvin, he said I was so knocked out that it was almost to the point where I was snoring. That's how bad it was. Mm-hmm. I went to the hospital. They did the CAT scan, they did an MRI, or not MRI, CAT scan. Couldn't find anything wrong. There was no bleeding. There is swelling because they said it's a severe concussion. And Scorpio called me the next day to just make sure I was okay. He apologized again, and I think the first thing I said to Scorpio when I came to was, "We're not doing that at WrestleCade. We're not doing that move."
Like the true wrestler, you've already made the edits. You know what I'm saying? Like, just let's call that spot off.
23 years I've never been knocked out. I've been knocked silly. Mm-hmm. You're getting smacked in the face, and I've been knocked silly, but I've never been knocked out. And I see where with the football players getting the concussions and stuff like that, because that happened October 10th, and to the day, if I start to talking fast, and your mic can hear it in this interview, I can't think of the words. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm talking about a refrigerator, sometimes where a refrigerator will leave I can't think, and it's starting to scare my wife, because it'll happen. I'm sitting there talking, it's almost I've developed a speech and a stutter because I can't think of the words to get out. I know it, but I can't make my brain process it. For the first 2 weeks, anytime I would lean over, I'd fall forward. And it just so happened that Thursday after I got knocked out, we left and went to Disney for a 4-day vacation.
Yeah, I remember. I saw on your Facebook. I was like, what was he
doing? We had been planning this for 6 or 7 months. So I said,
I was like, what a good husband.
I know. That's exactly right. And the trip over there, the pressure in the plane, it was kind of messing with me, but I was letting them know I was all right, but it was kind of messing with me. But we get on roller coasters, and
what are you doing? just sit out.
I can't, man. I'm trying to be a trooper for them because of everything that's going on. I'm trying to have fun. I mean, we did it. We had a blast. We had a good time. But I'd get off a roller coaster, man, I'd be wobbly. And the worst was, we're walking around in Epcot, and the Mission Space Ride, it's a space, you get launched. It's a simulator. Mm-hmm. And it's like you're going to Mars, and the little simulator turns, but it's a very small thing. So we get in, it's a 4-seat gimmick, and it's tight. But we only have 3 people. It's me, Shelly, and Cooper. Well, it's the overhead strap. It pulls down like you're going upside down. And as soon as that goes down, the doors close, and the console comes towards you to where it's maybe a foot and a half off of you. the room starts spinning. And I start having a panic attack. I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like I'm being buried alive, to the point, Jake, where I'm beating on the door with the back of my elbow, screaming at them to open it up. It's scaring Shelly Cooper. I mean, I've never had that bad of a panic attack. I felt like I was suffocating. I'm beating and beating. They're not coming. The ride gets ready to start, and I close my eyes, and I just start breathing. Just keep saying to myself, it'll be over soon. It's just a simulator. And after about 30 seconds, I calmed right down. Mm-hmm. But I didn't open my eyes back. I couldn't get back into it. Mm-hmm. So that was another part of that's the scary thing. But I think that night, getting knocked out, I've called it the perfect storm of screw-ups with
the ring.
The Scorpio landed on me, because we did it. The finish was at Hardcore Justice. We did it, and he landed across my stomach. I was turned wrong. If you go back and watch the video, I'm at an angle. I'm not straight because I set up for him to position me. We didn't get positioned right, lay back down, and it was just so many small errors that all came together and caused that. And when we wrestled each other at WrestleCade, we're going over the match, and at first he was going to do it, and he wanted to put me over. And I looked and I said, Scorpio, I trust you, but I'm scared to death to take that move again. And he says, you kind of got to take it to get it over. And he starts thinking, he said, well, we'll do it when we wrestle again. He said he was going to, and as in the match we go, and I stop him from doing it. But when he said that, I started shaking, and it's because I didn't want to take it. Ooh. There's some moves I don't want to take, and I won't take them. And that was one I didn't want to take it. And I said I won't take it again later down the road. But, right then I was like, I'm scared to death to take that. I was actually shaking to take that move. That's how I used to get when I worked Mike Awesome. I was shaking because I knew it was going to hurt me.
But man, it is a complete. Right when you said your head was on the wood, like, and I was like, because I knew like his ass kind of landed on you, on your face, but I didn't realize about that with like on the
right
wood, like that right there, like just oh my gosh.
I've told, when I tell people the story, I said there was a guy that wrestled around the area. His name was Timber, and Timber's a really big dude.
Yeah,
he's just fat, heavy set. He got huge
looks
legs.
like Grimace, the guy from McDonald's.
You're exactly right. The size, and he does moonsaults and stuff like that too. He's actually landed on my head the same way, but with the padding being there, it's been okay. Yeah, and it was totally that wood. And I said from that point over, I would never wrestle in a ring like this again. Never. Steve said, that's the most scared I've ever been being around you. He said, because I've never seen you knocked out. I've never seen you being like this. And Shelly, she's never been anything close to this. So she was beyond. One of the other women had to drag her out of the ring. Because even Scorpio said, get Shelly out of the ring. Mm-hmm. She's kind of making it worse because Steve said he grabbed her, or she grabbed him around the throat collar, the collar at the throat, and said, do something. That's all she kept screaming at him. Because I'm laying there, and if you go back and look at the video, you see my arms up under my right leg. People are looking at it. I said, that's what's scary, just the way you were laying. But that's something I sit there and think about it, and I was obsessed for about a week, watching the video over and over and over again, just reliving it, trying to get past that whole fear of it. Because if you go in the ring scared, you're going to get hurt. Yeah. So I was trying to get past that, but I don't.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Was when it's like when a great fighter gets knocked out. Once you have that inside and know that can happen to you, and I think it's as wrestlers we demystify ourselves the idea that we could get hurt. Yeah. And the second we start thinking that we could get hurt, that's when the problem happens. Because that's something George always says in training. He goes, listen, just don't think about it. Because the second you start thinking about it, you're going to get in your car and you're going to go home and you're never going to do this again. Because you realize how dangerous it really is.
Yeah, it's in the back of your mind. You don't think about it. When I teach people and do seminars, I always tell them, be prepared, because it's not if you get hurt or when you get hurt. It's just how bad. Yeah. Because you're going to get hurt, and it's going to happen. But it's just a point of how bad is it going to be. I've had a few close calls with my back, and I definitely get knocked out was the worst. The second one was my back at Hardcore Homecoming, when I slipped a disc at working Spike Dudley, and I had to stay in the bed for 28 straight days because I couldn't walk. I thought I was done then. And my whole thing was because I couldn't walk. I'm laid in the bed for 28 straight days, only being able to walk 10 feet, holding on to something to get to the bathroom. And I said, if I can ever walk in, I'll never wrestle. If I ever walk again, I'll never wrestle. And that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of forget about that.
Yeah, exactly. So then it's like, well, let's kind of push it,
Yeah. I remember the first time I took a bump, it was on my bed. I was testing it
Yeah.
to see. And I took a bump, and I just got all excited that I could actually bump and it not hurt me. Even though it was on my bed, it was like a kid at Christmas knowing I could do this again.
Yeah. We're stupid that way.
I know.
We're
We're Wile E. Coyotes. We're smart enough to get ourselves killed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and then also I've interviewed Bob Gefeller, who's in charge of the Children's Pediatric Trauma Institute, and they're trying to do a lot of work as far as like prevention of high school football injuries and athletic injuries and stuff like that. And they talk about that first couple hours when an incident like that happens, to have people there to take care of you and make sure that you're okay, and then get you to a facility where you can be taken care of for trauma. That's something that ever since that interview, I've made a lot of thought of. Like at these independent shows, we have nothing. And sometimes we drove there by ourselves, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and it might be an hour and a half before we're at a quality facility that could take care of us in case there is trauma.
Yeah, I was lucky that night because the hospital was next door. It was less than 5 minutes from the ambulance picking me up to me being in their emergency room. So I was lucky. But yeah, we go to a lot of places where there's nothing nearby.
Yeah.
And if you drive by yourself, you just don't know how you're gonna get home. Or like I wrestled in Lumberton about a couple years ago when Shelly and I first started dating, and got in a car wreck, and she had to drive 2 hours in the rain to come pick me up because I'm by myself. I'm stranded.
Yep.
So it's just a chance that we take going out every night or driving to these shows, because people don't understand. Unless you have a real job, you don't have health insurance. That's how I lost a lot of my money when I had liver failure. I didn't have health insurance.
Liver failure?
Yeah, 2005, I had liver failure.
Why is this? How'd this happen?
I took a drug called it was called Superdraw. It was by Anabolic Extreme, made by Anabolic Extreme. They sold it like GNC didn't have it, but those type stores sold it.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff like in the early 2000s that really kind of messed people up. Like I feel like I have issues with my testosterone levels because some of the stuff I took from GNC in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that was one of them. I started taking it. One of my bodybuilding friends was raving about it. Lodi was raving about it. Nobody's having these issues. I started taking it 2 weeks after that. I noticed I ate a half of a sandwich and had to throw it back up. My buddy looks at me. He goes, "You need to go to the doctor." He said, "Your eyes are yellow." And my liver was in failure. I went 21 days. I went from 255 to 212 because I couldn't eat. I had to, and this was around about the time I hurt my back, because when they finally cleared me from liver failure, my dumb ass went out and wrestled, and that's when I hurt my back working Spike.
What did they do with the liver failure? Just take time off, or just
it was nothing. There's nothing you could do for it. You had to literally let it run its course, and the liver.
You just let it all get through.
It regenerates itself and it recovers itself. I couldn't take Tylenol. I couldn't take anything. I had to any pain I was in, I couldn't take anything because my liver wasn't producing it. It got to the point where the bile that usually processes my liver, my body was pushing it out through my pores. So if you've ever, and you're fair skinned like me, so when you've ever been sunburned and it starts to heal, you're constantly itching. My entire body itched like that for 2 solid weeks because of the bile that was pushing through my skin. I couldn't eat. Again, I went from 255 to 212 in 21 days.
Heck of a diet.
It's another great way to lose weight. There's a thing in your liver, and all this stuff I didn't know. That's called bilirubins. Your bilirubin count is supposed to be around 1 or 2. Anything above 7 is dangerous. The night I went in, they said it was at 11. The next day it dropped back to 8. The next 4 or 5 days later, I went back for a checkup. It was at 23. So they started making plans to put me on the liver transplant list.
Oh, wow. And
I said, well, what does that consist of? They said, it's about 7 years to get a liver. You go through dialysis every day to keep you alive till you find if you find a suitable donor. No health insurance, nothing. All for a couple $100.
Ugh,
so
man.
yeah. That was 2005.
That was 2005.
Yeah, that was my 2005 story.
Jesus, man.
And again, we still do this.
Yeah, we still find
put
a way
all
to-
these stuff to put in our body. I watch what I take with Tylenol now. So I started taking acetaminophen. That leaves Advil. I'm not Advil, but it leaves. It burnt a hole in my esophagus and was starting to burn the liner in my stomach. They thought I had Barrett's cancer, which is a cancer I guess you get in your esophagus. They thought I had Barrett's cancer. I had to have two endoscopes to go down, and they took samples to see if I had Barrett's cancer because of it, from taking that stuff.
I thought I was in bad health. CW, you make me feel like Jack LaLanne right now.
Yeah. So I can't take a lot of that stuff. I can't take a lot of Tylenol. I don't take anything crazy from GNC anymore. I'll do whey protein, but that's the extent of it.
Yeah, like I said, I took some stuff like M1 and like a lot of other stuff, and I feel like my testosterone levels are a little off. But now I just take just a testosterone booster, and then it puts me back to feeling like a normal human being.
Because you don't never know that.
Yeah.
That stuff's not FDA approved.
Yeah, and then like it usually disappears. Like, oh well, shoot, I can't get my supplement that makes me look fantastic anymore because I said that there's side effects. And then 10 years later, I'm like, what was I complaining about? I was complaining I couldn't get this drug that made me feel awful now.
Oh, no. I had people emailing me when I was taking that, when my story came out, because Mike Johnson put the story out about me, with the liver failure. The Washington Post picked it up. Somebody said they did tests on it and found out it was a steroid that a company just attached a molecule to it to make it a legal pro hormone. That's exactly what they did. Then people started contacting me through email, all across the country. They'd been on it for 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, and now they're starting to have liver problems too because of it. And it was because of me partly because of me that they took it off the market.
Oh, wow.
I got a lot of heat from the bodybuilding community. A lot of heat because they're taking it off the shelf because of me.
Yeah, well.
I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
If
you're the biggest heel now for the bodybuilder. Like if they ever bring back the WBF from like back when Vince had the bodybuilding federation, you could be the biggest heel there.
I'd be that. You want to still sell and keep taking it? I don't care. It didn't bother me. Actually, the owner of the company emailed me.
Yeah.
And want to know what I was going to do about it. Not in it, but he's like, "Are you going to sue us? Are you going to do things like that?" I just want to live.
Yeah.
I have no intention. I'm not out here to make $1. He's like, I'm sorry this has happened. Let us know if we can anything we can do.
Well, that's at least human.
Yeah. It was two owners, and one of them emailed me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well. So at least that's the human thing to do.
I know.
But as we get a little bit closer to the end, something that I always like to talk about with every one of my guests, especially as of recently, is the topic of success. What it is, how do you define it? Have you feel like you have achieved it? Or are you still seeking it? Like just the idea of it. Like what do you define as what is success?
I guess my interpretation of it would be, if you're successful in this business, it's to the point where you've made enough money that you don't have to work a real job and go back to that. You can live off of what you've made. And like your Stone Colds and Rocks and guys like that have been on, even the Hardys were successful because of what they've made in this business. And I guess money drives everything. I am successful to a point, but not to that level. My definition of success would be to the point where you don't have, when you're done with this business, you can go off and just live. You don't have to work a regular job anymore. You don't have to go and grind out every day to make that living because you've made enough money to live off of. Would be my definition of success, being successful.
So it's a scale of 1 to 10, and it's got usually dollar signs attached to it. Is how you see it.
Yeah, some people won't look at it that way, but when you're in this business, we're all look to be famous, but in the end, it's all about money. You want to be able to make enough money that you don't have to go back. That's why you work so hard to do this in some instances. So you don't have to work a real job. The time I was at ECW and the time I was at Japan, I didn't have to work a real job. I lost a lot of money being at ECW because I wasn't getting paid a lot. And when I went to Japan, I made a good amount of money, but again, lost it all because of my health issues. But the other guys, if you're on top at WWE, you're gonna make money. Just for you're hearing these guys having private buses and flying first class everywhere and making 7 figures easily. That's successful to me. And in the end, it is about the dollar.
Okay. Well, on that, where you fall on that scale from 1 to 10 that has dollar signs attached to it. Are you happy where you sit on that scale?
Right.
How do you feel about it?
I wish I would have been. There's a lot parts of me that I felt like I was right there to get to that next level. It's almost like me being a baseball player. I was offered a contract, turned it down because an influence of my mom, turned it down, and my life would have taken a totally different story. I would have probably been successful as a baseball player because I was really good. I was right there to sign the contract with ECW to be their next television champion, to start finally making money at ECW. And it was taken away from me. I never felt like I got a fair shake at the ECW, the WWE version of ECW. So there's a lot of me that still feels like I wasn't successful as what I thought I should have been. I think my talents in the ring speaks for itself. I've always said, and this is not the ego part of me, it's the confidence part of me, that I could go in there with anybody and hang with them. I don't give a crap how old you are, how young you are. I can still hang with you right now. I wish I would have been more successful. And again, it attributes to the dollar sign. I wish I'd have made more money than what I did. And it felt like I was being shorted with the demise of ECW. I think I had worked so hard to get to that point, and right when I'm about to take that brass ring and run with it at ECW, they shut down. The match I'm still remembering for now was the I Quit match. It was the last match I did at ECW. And it's like when everybody finally got to know who C.W. Anderson was. And again, I never got to perform there. We did a little tour, a little loop right after that, but I never got to that point. So I guess my success wouldn't be at a 10 by no means. It'd probably be about halfway, because I still had more to do in wrestling. And there's a bitter part of me that comes out when I start talking about that stuff, because it's like it's always been right there for me, and about when I go, that's the way I feel, is when I go out and reach for it, it gets taken back from me. I don't know why it's been like that. That just seems like how it's been for me. It's not. I don't know if I'm not making excuses, but I can't do anything about the demise of ECW. It was stupid of me to turn down the baseball contract, letting my mom talk me out of turning down the baseball contract. But I wish I'd have been more successful. But as far as where I'm at right now in my life, I'm really happy, because I get me being the faith I do have. Things turned out how they were supposed to. Everything happened for a reason. There's nothing by chance. That's the way I've lived. You weren't supposed to, to be on the road constantly. You were supposed to be where you're at right now. Because that's the way I have to live. Because if I start thinking about what should have been, could have been, I'll be a miserable person.
And is that like, it's inside of you, it still exists? Do you ever think that it's never that feeling of would have, could have, should have?
Yeah.
Do you ever think that'll ever go away, or do you feel like it ever needs to go away?
I don't know if it needs to go away, because that's what drives me. That's what keeps me out there in my gym and behind my house every day. That's driving me. Who knows if I want to say I'll never get another shot doing it. Hell, I just saw Tommy Dreamer back on the WWE doing the TLC match in Rhino up there as well. Because there's still so many outlets out there. If I ever got the chance, would I turn it down? No. Just to do it one more time. I don't think it may go away when I step away from wrestling, but as far as I'm in it right now, it won't go away, because I think that's another thing too, that woulda, coulda, shoulda. It's what's driving me to be in that ring all the time and to have these matches just to prove and to show people, to get it out there that C.W. Anderson can still do it.
Because is it almost that struggle? Like, it's almost comfortable to know that you have that inside of you still.
I've made peace with it almost, to be able, because there was a point that I went through a bad depression spell because of it, because I was like, man, I know I should be here. I know I should be doing these things. I'm better than these guys on TV. I've never had the best look in the world. I've never been, 6'3", 6'4", and have all these muscles. That's just not my character. That's not my style. but I know my wrestling could speak for itself. And then it got to a point where it didn't bother me as bad that I wasn't on TV anymore. And if I do step away from wrestling, it might go away. But as long as I'm in it right now, I'm still going to go out there. And that drive is, I'll show you. Tell me that I didn't belong. Tell me that I couldn't made it on TV, because that's what drove me when at Power Plant, when Paul Orndorff and J.J. Dillon told me that I didn't have what it take to make it in this business because it's such a cosmetic company. My wrestling was okay, but they didn't think I'd have what it take to make it in this business. So when I got to ECW in my first pay-per-view match, even though it was a dark match, that was my drive. Even Tommy Dreamer told me, he pulls me to the side and says, go out there and show JJ and Paul and all those at WCW that you belong in this wrestling business. Go out there and show them what kind of wrestler you are. And that sticks in my head today, is go out there and show these people that I can still do it.
Mm-hmm. And you've got to at least enjoy the struggle of it. I mean, that's why you're still doing it today.
Yeah.
You know?
It's you know as well, it's always a struggle being in the ring to be out there. And, you know, even sometimes you say yourself, you're driving. I mean, look how far you drove to do this interview with me, and then you got to drive. Sometimes like, why in the world am I doing this? Sometimes you have that question. You know why you're doing it, but when you go to a show out in the middle of nowhere and there's 10 people in the crowd and you have to drive home at night, you're like, why in the world am I still doing this? And you having that inside you, the love for the business, that struggle, the proving people wrong. There's so many, we all fighting our own battles and own demons of why we're still in the ring. And that's why we're still doing it.
Well, what do you think would ever cause you to not do it anymore? Would you say, all right, I'm done? Or like, what do you think is the tipping point as far as that goes? What's that in your head?
I got asked that question a few weeks ago by a really young guy in the business. And he said, how much longer are you going to do this? He said, is there a question?
Well, I wouldn't ask it like that. That's kind of dickish. I'm just wondering for myself.
Yeah,
what's the checklist you have to go through on the way out? Like,
it made me sit there and think, I don't know. I couldn't say it's going to be another injury, because the injuries I've had should have been sufficient enough to say, okay, you can't take that chance.
Yeah, there's a couple of those I would have built on.
But I don't know if somebody was to tell me that I didn't have it, or that I'm hurting, I won't say hurting the business, but I just can't go like I could anymore. Because I'll know when it's to that point. Because I tried playing baseball in an older league, and I could tell that I've become so accustomed to doing something else. I didn't have it. I can still throw a baseball hard, but it's the whole aspect of being on the baseball field, I couldn't do that part anymore. So I haven't done that. Play softball, but that's a whole different beast.
Yeah.
But as far as being in the ring, I think it's going to have to be to the point where I can't compete. I can't stay at that level. Anybody I get in the ring with, I just can't hang with them. I guess it's going to have to be that. Because again, it can't be an injury. So it's going to have to be
when you're not giving people their money's worth.
When I'm not giving them their money's worth, and there's like, man, you just don't have it anymore. Then I'll say, okay, then maybe it's time to step away.
Well, I started with a funny story to do this interview about first time we met. I want to bookend it with another story that you're not aware of as well to end this whole thing. To kind of tie it up in this nice little bow to kind of come off of like whether you're giving people their money's worth or not.
Right.
Chaos and Cameron, when it was the main event for the Mega Show, Briscoes versus the Hardy Boys.
Yes.
You were in a 6-man elimination match, and I wrestled earlier in the night, and I remember watching that match because I was interested in the main event, but 6-way, look, this could be kind of interesting. I think it's like you, Shane Helms,
Bravados, Caleb. And
we might be thinking of a different one because there's Mickey Gambino.
No, it's Mickey, Caleb.
Yeah, you're right. It was that one.
Yeah,
Mickey, Caleb, Bravados, and Shane Helms.
Yep.
And it came down to you and Shane Helms, and obviously, and you ended up winning that match. And I remember watching that match, and watching that match almost made me quit wrestling that night.
Why is that?
because in this world of pro wrestling the way it is now, there's the guys that are getting the interest and the attention, the guys that do the bunch of flips and do a bunch of false finishes and a million whatever. There's much. I have my own issues with the way wrestling has shifted and stuff like that, and I feel like guys that care about the craft aren't appreciated or don't stand out
Right.
on a card whatsoever. But that's the way I've always been taught, and to care about the craft of it and the specific of it and being technically proficient.
Yeah, anybody could do a flip. It's like Sarge used to say, they'd see the guys at the power plant doing flips and moonsaults, and he said, how about a headlock and a tackle drop down?
Mm-hmm.
How about do that?
But when you see guys that are so good, and there's not a lot of guys that wrestle that way anymore, so sometimes if you're that proficient, it never works out because the guy across from you isn't as proficient. But that night, I don't know what it is, and I've seen you always be very good and very technically proficient, but that night, you were so incredible that I remember watching that match, and and watching your performance in it. Because everything you did was flawless. Everything was perfectly timed. You were there. Like, it doesn't get any more crisp or more precise or perfect in a sense. And I was like, as soon as that match ended, I was like, I will never be that good, ever. You know what I'm saying? It's like when people like a guitar player seeing Jimi Hendrix play for the first time. I mean, it was that level of proficiency. And it wasn't just that I saw it. I remember when the finish happened, there was a hush and a quiet as soon as it happened. Because I think most people would think that Shane Helms was going to win. But you won. And when you won, it's almost like everybody knew, like, because of your performance, like, of course he would win. Because he was the better wrestler in that match. Like you said, it was so good that even the people, there was almost 1,000 people, they realized how good you were.
Oh, thanks.
At that moment, because they were expecting Hurricane win, we're going to hit our cues, but when they happen, they're like, it's almost like they could sense a greatness in the ring at that time, and they hadn't like crowned the champion yet, so like coming into it, like, I would be shocked if they put the belt on CW, and I think there's a lot of people that felt that way because of that match, because because there's so much going on. There's 5 other guys, and you were directing a lot of traffic, and you were always there because sometimes those things end to be cluster. But anything that you were ever involved in was so perfectly timed and done with such a precision that even the most common fan that are impressed by the flips and the million false finishes, they were impressed what you did. And I just remember being in such awe that I was like, I will never be that good. And if you're not trying to be the best or be that good, why are you in it? And I'm just like, well, I don't care how hard I work. I will never come that close because it was that good. And anytime that there's a platform that I talk about some of my favorite match, I always try and talk about that. But I've wanted to tell, that night I wanted to go up and tell you, but I felt like it'd be weird. And then ever since then, I've been trying to find a moment where I could come up to you and tell you that. Yeah. And now that I finally have you captive on camera, I figured this is the best time to do it, to look like a fanboy and embarrass myself in front of as many people.
Again, it's that compliment you're giving me. It means a lot from people in this business that, that I respect and think a lot of. And you're one of those people because to go out there and do the gimmick you do, it's totally different. It's way off the norm, and you're able to pull the gimmick off. And that's the part I respect, is going out there. I couldn't do that, and you're able to get a Boy Scout gimmick over, which I would never think about. But when you give these type of compliments coming from you, it means a lot to me, and I do appreciate that. And again, the brilliance of Shane booking that, and he told me that night, you're going to beat all 3 of us back to back to back. He said, because we need you in there strong when it comes time. And you tell me I was there for everything. That means a lot to me, knowing that you watched. Not just from the fan part, but the intricacy of everything. Mm-hmm. That you study it like I do. That's the part I thrive at. Try to thrive at anyway. Well, is being perfect in everything.
Just thrive. You succeed at it, sir. And I see a lot of wrestling on a daily basis. So, like, incredible. Like,
thank you.
It just I wanted to say that to you for about a year, and now that I have this podcast, I figure what better way to say it.
That's perfect, yeah.
And like I wanted to say it away from everybody, but I was like, no, I'm gonna say this in public and embarrass myself in a sense. But like, no, you have always been top notch in the ring and a top notch human being. And
thank you, Jay.
Like I told you, you were on the short list of guys. I don't put a lot of wrestlers on this program, and I wanted you to be on here.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope everything have been saying helps anybody that watches this and is looking for that little extra motivation to say, well, if CW goes through this, or they hear you talking about your own stories, if Jake goes through this, then who am I to be any better than that? And that's what sometimes I put these things out here is just to tell my struggle and how I act in the ring, so people is like, man, they see the other side, what clicks inside, and just instead of seeing the outside person, they see what drives you. So,
all right. Well, thank you, CW, for your time, and welcome me in your home.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.